I walked into my own backyard and found 3 strangers splashing in my pool like they owned the place. That's not a metaphor, not an exaggeration, not some weird dream. It was Saturday morning, sun burning down, and I had just dragged a basket of laundry outside when I heard voices that didn't belong. I thought maybe my cousins had stopped by unannounced, but no, these were complete strangers. 2 women in floppy hats sipping canned cocktails, one guy floating on my inflatable flamingo that my niece had left here last summer. My flamingo. In my pool. When I demanded to know what in the world they were doing, the guy on the flamingo lifted his drink and said, "We rented this place on Airbnb." He even had the nerve to look confused, like I was the one trespassing. My pulse went from 0 to jackhammer in a second. I've dealt with weird neighbors before, but never this. So I told him flatly, "This is my house. My pool. You didn't rent anything." The women exchanged glances, then one dug her phone out of a waterproof pouch. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, an Airbnb listing with my backyard in crisp, high-resolution photos. Same brick patio, same blue pool chairs, even the crack in the diving board I've been meaning to fix. The host's name on the listing? Karen. HOA president. My next-door nightmare. I wasn't even surprised. That woman has spent years treating the entire neighborhood like her personal property. But even for her, this was Olympic-level entitlement. I told the strangers they'd been scammed and needed to leave, but they resisted. "We paid for this weekend," the man said, as if his Venmo receipt gave him squatter's rights. That's when the sarcasm in me switched on, because anger alone wasn't going to cut it. I said, "Okay, then you're welcome to call the police and tell them you rented a pool from someone who doesn't own it. Let me know how that works out." The guy cursed under his breath, but they eventually packed up their cooler and muttered about refunds. Once they were gone, I locked the gate, stormed inside, and sat at my kitchen table shaking with a mix of adrenaline and absurdity. I pulled up Airbnb, typed in my zip code, and sure enough, there it was, right there on the screen. Luxury pool retreat, private access. Photos taken from my own yard, my own furniture, my grill in the corner. Karen had literally turned my backyard into her side hustle. The detail that really pushed me over the edge was the description. She had written, "Perfect for family fun, professionally maintained, safe neighborhood with HOA oversight." HOA oversight, as if she were bragging that she was the tyrant in charge of the block. And the price? $200 a day with a cleaning fee. I almost laughed. She couldn't even be bothered to skim cheap. She was charging boutique resort prices for something she didn't own. I wasn't reckless enough to confront her immediately. Karen thrives on chaos, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of a screaming match on her lawn. Instead, I screenshotted everything. The listing, the photos, even the reviews. Yes, reviews, because apparently I wasn't her first victim. Some guy named Jeff had left a 5-star rating saying, "Great pool, very private." Another said, "Host was a little strict about noise, but overall enjoyable." My mind reeled at the thought of strangers using my pool while I was at work, while my windows were wide open, while my kid's bike sat leaned against the shed. I spent the rest of the day pacing, wondering how to play it. Call Airbnb? Call the cops? Lawyer up? But something in me didn't just want justice, I wanted to flip the script. If Karen thought she could post my property online like it was hers, I was going to make her regret it in a way she'd never forget. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the plan came to me so clearly it almost felt like fate. I would book her listing. I would show up, suitcase in hand, and walk straight into my own backyard as her paying customer. If she wanted to pretend she was the queen of this HOA-run resort, then I'd play the role of the guest she couldn't refuse. And when the curtain fell, everyone, the neighbors, the board, maybe even the cops, would see exactly what she had been running. The thought made me grin in the dark. This wasn't just going to be about reclaiming my pool. This was going to be about dismantling her little empire, one entitled brick at a time. And if I played it right, she wouldn't even see it coming. When the Airbnb confirmation email landed in my inbox, I had to laugh. It felt surreal, booking my own house like I was a tourist sneaking in undercover. But there it was, luxury pool retreat, private access, hosted by Karen. The system didn't question that my credit card address matched the property location, didn't flag anything about the host not being the homeowner. Airbnb was blind. The perfect stage for what I was about to do. I booked 2 nights, Friday to Sunday, so she wouldn't suspect anything about a one-day stunt. The entire week leading up to it, I played it cool. I still waved politely when she strutted past my driveway in her visor and clipboard, lording over the neighborhood like some self-appointed sheriff. She was oblivious, probably counting the dollars in her head from all the guests she had scammed into thinking they were on vacation in a pool that wasn't hers. Meanwhile, I was working on my props. I packed a small overnight bag like I really was staying at some suburban resort. A paperback novel, sunscreen, a cheap inflatable ring I bought at Walmart. Even a bottle of wine, though I had no intention of drinking it. The performance had to be convincing. Friday afternoon arrived, and I felt my stomach tighten as I parked 2 streets away. No way was I pulling into my own driveway with my rolling suitcase like a sitcom character. I wanted the optics just right, Karen seeing me approach from an outsider's angle. So I parked near the elementary school, tugged my bag behind me, and rounded the corner like I was arriving from the airport. Sure enough, there she was, waiting by the gate in full HOA regalia. Visor, clipboard, sunglasses perched on her head. She even had a welcome smile plastered on, fake enough to make a toothpaste commercial jealous. "Hello. You must be the guest," she chirped, as if we hadn't had 3 screaming matches over property lines in the last 2 years. I played dumb, grinning like an eager customer. "Yes. Looking forward to the stay. Is this the luxury pool retreat?" Her chest puffed up. She launched into her spiel about amenities. "You'll have full access to the pool and patio. Please keep noise to a minimum after 9 p.m. This is a family neighborhood, and the HOA enforces standards." She emphasized, the HOA, as though it were the Vatican and she were the Pope. I nodded, dragging my suitcase through my own side gate, biting my tongue so hard I tasted iron. Every inch of me wanted to scream, "This is my house," but the act was too delicious to ruin. She gave me a little tour, explaining how to use the pool cover, my pool cover, which she could barely manage to roll, and pointing out where I could dispose of trash. She even handed me a laminated sheet of house rules, complete with bullet points about sunscreen stains and no outside alcohol. I slipped it into my bag for evidence, pretending to take it seriously. "Got it, thanks," I said. The moment she left, my sarcasm broke loose. I stood on my own patio, suitcase at my feet, and said out loud, "Welcome home, valued guest. 5 stars for authenticity." I pulled out my phone and started filming. Not for TikTok, not yet, but for documentation. Karen thought she was running a resort? Fine, I'd keep a travel vlog of my stay. I filmed the chairs, the grill, the pool, narrating in a cheery voice. As you can see, the host has thoughtfully provided floaties, mismatched chairs, and a broken diving board, truly luxury touches. That evening, I made a show of settling in. I spread a towel on the lounge chair, cracked open my book, and waited for the inevitable. Karen was incapable of leaving anything alone for more than an hour. True to form, she appeared at twilight, pretending to check in on her guests. She peered through the slats in the fence, then called over. "Everything okay?" I waved casually. "Lovely. Couldn't ask for better." She smiled, satisfied, and retreated. The power play had begun. I could feel it. Saturday morning brought Act 2. I had planned carefully for this part. I invited a friend, Tom, who knew the whole backstory and had been itching for front row seat. I told him to arrive like any other guest, luggage in hand, and to play along as my travel companion. When he showed up, Karen practically sprinted across the yard. Oh, we only booked for one guest, she said, clipboard already twitching. Tom smiled disarmingly. Actually, we paid for 2 nights. I'm his plus one. He flashed his phone screen with the confirmation email, because I'd forwarded it to him earlier, knowing she'd try to contest it. Her jaw worked, but she swallowed her protest. Couldn't argue with the sacred Airbnb booking email. Fine, she sniffed. But no parties. This is not a frat house. We both nodded solemnly, biting back laughter. That afternoon, I staged the reveal in small doses. I cooked burgers on my grill, the one she had forbidden me from keeping out during last year's HOA crackdown. I cranked music on my outdoor speakers, at a reasonable volume, but enough to needle her. Every move was deliberate, a reminder that this was my property and she was powerless to stop me while I wore the mask of paying guest. The real twist came when I overheard her talking to another neighbor over the fence. She bragged, loud enough for me to catch, about how she had secured exclusive rights to the property through her HOA authority. My jaw tightened. Exclusive rights? That wasn't just bending the truth, that was flat-out fraud. She wasn't just renting my pool, she was rewriting the story of ownership. In her mind, she was the landlord, the benevolent provider, and I was just another guest passing through. I knew then the endgame had to be bigger than just embarrassing her. She was building a narrative, one that could actually stick if I didn't shatter it completely. So I escalated. That evening, Tom and I dressed like tourists, Hawaiian shirts, sunglasses at dusk, the works, and filmed a fake Airbnb review. We praised the pool, the host's attentiveness, even joked about the gourmet trash disposal service. Then, halfway through the video, I deadpanned. Of course, the best part is that I actually own this property. That's right. I'm reviewing my own backyard, because my HOA president decided to rent it out without permission. Tom kept a straight face, nodding along like it was the most normal thing in the world. We saved the clip, ready to unleash it when the timing was right. Later that night, as crickets chirped and the pool lights glowed, I lay on the lounge chair, staring at the stars, mind racing. I had her. I had the screenshots, the video, the laminated rules, the confirmation emails. But more importantly, I had leverage. She didn't know yet that I was the storm waiting to hit. What she didn't realize, and what made me grin into the night sky, was that tomorrow morning I'd be checking out. Not with a thank you note or a polite wave, but with a public unmasking that would make sure her little empire of lies crumbled in front of everyone who mattered. And if I played it right, she wouldn't just lose her fake listing. She'd lose the iron grip she held over the entire neighborhood. Checkout day didn't start with coffee, it started with strategy. I was up before sunrise, pacing my kitchen like a chess player reviewing the board before the final move. My suitcase was still propped against the patio chair where I had left it last night, and the laminated rule sheet sat neatly folded on the counter like a prop waiting for its cue. Today wasn't about pretending to be a guest anymore. Today was about pulling the curtain back so the entire neighborhood saw Karen for what she was. The timing had to be perfect. On Sunday mornings, half the block shuffled to church and the other half mowed their lawns or walked their dogs. By 10 a.m., you could count on at least a dozen neighbors being outside within earshot. Karen loved this routine because it gave her an audience for her patrols. I intended to use that audience against her. I called Tom just after 7. He picked up groggily. "Big day," I said. "Bring your phone. We're going live." He groaned, then laughed when he realized I was serious. By 8, I was setting the stage. Literally. I dragged my folding table onto the patio, set my laptop on it, and angled the screen toward the pool. I queued up the Airbnb listing so anyone watching would see the evidence right there. The photos of my pool, my furniture, my grill, all stolen for her scam. Beside it, I placed a speaker, ready to blast the Airbnb review video Tom and I had recorded last night. My yard looked less like a rental retreat and more like a press conference. At 9:30, Tom arrived with donuts, like we were hosting an open house. He winked. You think she suspects anything? I shook my head. Karen always assumes she's 10 moves ahead. She's not built to imagine anyone else outsmarting her. We didn't have to wait long. Right on schedule, Karen strutted over in her visor and clipboard, the eternal queen of HOA micromanagement. She didn't even greet me at first. She addressed Tom, probably assuming he was more pliable. Checkout is at 11, she said crisply. Be sure to tidy up the pool area. And leave the key in the mailbox. The key. She said it like she was the landlord, like I owed her something. My jaw clenched, but I kept my tone smooth. Don't worry, Karen. We'll wrap up. In fact, we're planning a little send-off. You're welcome to join. She eyed me suspiciously. What kind of send-off? Just a quick review. You know, for future guests. Her lips twitched. She loved reviews, I realized. She fed off validation, even the fake kind. That was why she had built this whole illusion in the first place. I gestured toward the table. Stick around. You'll want to see this. By then, the neighbors were already orbiting. Mr. Delgado from across the street paused mid-lawnmower to watch. The walkers lingered with their golden retriever on its leash. A couple of teens from down the block leaned on their bikes, curiosity pulling them in like gravity. Perfect. At exactly 10 o'clock, I tapped my laptop. The Airbnb listing filled the screen, and I raised my voice just enough for the block to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my review of the luxury pool retreat. Tom played cameraman, holding his phone high as if broadcasting live. I waved theatrically toward the pool. As you can see, the host has provided an immaculate setting. 5 stars for the flamingo float, though I do recommend patching the crack in the diving board. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Karen's smile was taut, uncertain. Then I clicked the next tab, the Airbnb receipt with my name and address. I booked this retreat for the weekend, and I must say the location is stunning. Very convenient, because it's literally my house. Gasp. Actual gasp. Karen's face went pale under the brim of her visor. I could feel her panic radiating like heat from asphalt. I didn't give her time to recover. I launched the video review Tom and I had staged. Our recorded selves joked about staying at my own backyard, thanks to my entrepreneurial HOA president. The sarcasm dripped so thick the neighbors couldn't miss it. Laughter bubbled from the crowd again, but this time sharper, more incredulous. Karen snapped. She lunged toward the laptop, hissing, "Turn that off right now." I sidestepped calmly, letting her frustration dig her hole deeper. "Why?" I asked. "It's a great listing. You even called it professionally maintained. That's the best joke I've heard all year." The neighbors weren't laughing anymore. They were murmuring. Mr. Delgado shook his head, muttering about trespass. One of the Walker kids whispered, "Wait, she's been renting it out?" Karen flailed, trying to reframe. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "The HOA has oversight. I was just managing community resources." "Community resources?" I repeated, my voice cutting sharp. "So my backyard, my pool, my grill, those belong to the HOA now?" Her eyes darted, searching for support, but none came. The neighbors had seen the receipt. They'd seen the listing with their own eyes. Her authority, once unquestioned, cracked in real time. I pressed harder. "And let's not forget the strangers who showed up here last week waving their booking confirmations. Families, kids, drinking by the pool while my home sat unlocked. Did the HOA authorize that too?" Karen sputtered, but every word she reached for collapsed before it left her throat. That's when Tom delivered the coup de grace. He held up his phone like a badge. "By the way, we've been recording this whole time. So if anyone needs to see proof, we've got the video, the emails, the rules sheet, the host profile. All tied neatly with a bow." The effect was nuclear. Neighbors backed away from Karen as if her fraud were contagious. One muttered about calling the board. Another said something about police. The golden retriever barked, sensing the tension. Karen tried one last Hail Mary. "You don't understand. The HOA board supports me. They know what I'm doing. They. She stopped cold, because right then, as if scripted, Mr. Reynolds, the HOA treasurer, walked up. He'd been drawn out by the commotion, coffee mug in hand. He raised an eyebrow. Supports you in what, Karen? Silence fell. You could hear the pool filter humming. I gestured toward the laptop. In running an Airbnb scam out of my property. Reynolds peered at the screen, then at Karen, then back at me. His lips pressed into a thin line. Is this true? Karen's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. The crowd waited, the air thick. Finally, Reynolds spoke, voice low and measured. Karen, if you've been renting properties without consent, you're in violation of multiple bylaws. And if you use the HOA name to justify it, that's fraud. Serious fraud. Her visor wobbled as her knees seemed to weaken. For the first time in years, she looked small. I seized the moment. So here's my review, folks. 1 star. Do not recommend. Host is entitled, dishonest, and illegally rents what she doesn't own. Worst part? She's your HOA president. The applause that followed wasn't loud, it wasn't that kind of crowd, but it was worse for her. It was chuckles, nods, a dog barking like punctuation. Approval of me. Disapproval of her. The verdict of the neighborhood. Karen turned, stumbling, and scurried back toward her house without another word. Her clipboard slipped from her grip, clattering on the sidewalk. The neighbors watched her retreat, some shaking their heads, others whispering. By Monday morning, the neighborhood was humming like a hive after someone had kicked it. Word of Karen's Airbnb empire spread faster than dandelion seeds on a windy day. People whispered on sidewalks, groups huddled at mailboxes, and even the teenagers were making jokes about checking into Hotel Karen. For the first time in years, the HOA president's grip on the block looked shaky. But if there was one thing I knew about Karen, it was this. She didn't go down without thrashing. I expected some kind of retaliation, but I underestimated the speed of her counterattack. At noon sharp, an envelope slid under my door. No postage, no name, just a sheet of HOA stationery with bold letters across the top. Violation notice. According to Karen, my pool was out of compliance with neighborhood standards, my lounge chairs posed a safety hazard, and my grill was an unapproved fixture. The cherry on top was a fine $1, $500, payable within 30 days. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. She had been caught red-handed renting my property without consent, and her response was to fine me for using it myself. Classic Karen. But I didn't rip the letter up. No, this was more evidence. The kind of retaliatory paper trail that would burn her credibility to ashes once I stacked it beside the Airbnb scam. Still, I knew better than to underestimate her. Karen thrived on bureaucracy. She could twist bylaws into pretzels and sell them as straight lines. If she thought she could bury me under fines and notices until I broke, she'd try. That meant I had to move fast, before she spun her narrative into something the board might actually swallow. That evening, I walked to Mr. Reynolds's house. The treasurer had looked shaken yesterday when the scam came to light, but I needed more than a raised eyebrow. I needed an ally. He opened the door still in his slippers, coffee mug in hand again. When he saw me, he sighed. I figured you'd come by. We sat at his kitchen table, and I spread the laminated rule sheet, screenshots, and violation notice in front of him. His frown deepened with each page. This is worse than I thought, he muttered. She's not just abusing her position. She's exposing the HOA to liability. If one of her guests had gotten hurt in your pool, the board would have been dragged into it. Exactly, I said. And now she's retaliating with bogus fines. She thinks she can outpaper me. Reynolds rubbed his temple. There's a board meeting on Wednesday. Bring all of this. Don't just tell the story, show it. I'll back you. I left his house feeling the first real shift of momentum. Karen wasn't just cornered socially anymore, she was cornered legally. But that didn't mean she wouldn't bite. Sure enough, Tuesday morning, the chaos escalated. I woke up to the sound of hammering. When I pulled back my curtains, my jaw dropped. Karen had hired workers, actual contractors, to start building a fence along the edge of my backyard. Not her yard, mine. Bright orange stakes marked a crooked line that sliced 5 feet into my property, swallowing part of my pool deck. I stormed outside, phone in hand, recording every second. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded. The foreman, a stocky guy in a hard hat, shrugged. "We were told to build a fence for the HOA president. Said it was her land." "Wrong," I snapped. "This is my deeded property. Put that post in the ground, and you're trespassing." The workers hesitated, murmuring among themselves. Karen appeared moments later, marching over like a general onto a battlefield. "This fence is to correct property boundaries," she announced, loud enough for neighbors to hear. "You've encroached on community space for years, and the HOA is finally taking action." The audacity nearly knocked me over. Encroached? On my own patio? She said it with such conviction I could see the doubt flicker in the workers' eyes. That was her power. She lied so confidently people believed her, at least for a moment. I raised my phone higher. "Contractors, listen carefully. If you dig so much as one hole here, you'll be liable for trespassing and damages. And I'll have this video in court to back it up. So you decide, keep working for someone who doesn't own this land, or pack it up now." The foreman frowned, clearly unwilling to risk it. After a muttered conversation, he signaled his crew to load the truck. Karen's face twisted, but she didn't stop them. She stood on the sidewalk, fists balled, seething as her project collapsed in real time. That afternoon, she switched tactics again. I received 3 calls from unknown numbers. 2 potential buyers, asking if my house was on the market, and 1 city inspector wanting to schedule a pool safety review. It didn't take Sherlock Holmes to trace the source. Karen was trying to harass me through proxies, make my life such a hassle-I'd cave. But instead of breaking, her desperation fueled me. I gathered everything: calls, notices, the aborted fence, the Airbnb proof, into a neatly organized folder. By the time Wednesday evening rolled around, I felt like a lawyer marching into court. The board meeting was held in the community center, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, folding chairs arranged in stiff rows. Residents filled the room, buzzing with curiosity. Karen sat at the head table, visor replaced with a more formal blazer, as if a wardrobe change could erase her crimes. She smiled thinly at me when I walked in, the kind of smile that promised war. Reynolds called the meeting to order, his voice steady but tense. "Tonight we'll be addressing some urgent matters regarding HOA leadership and property misuse." The murmurs swelled. Everyone knew what was coming. Karen struck first. She launched into a speech about misunderstandings and community resources, painting herself as the victim of a smear campaign. "Certain individuals have twisted my efforts to maintain property values into something sinister," she declared, glancing pointedly at me. "I have always acted in the best interest of this neighborhood." I waited until she finished, then stood slowly, calm as stone. "Best interest?" I said, my voice carrying across the room. "Let's review." One by one, I laid the evidence on the projector Reynolds had set up. The Airbnb listing. The laminated rules. The booking receipt with my name. The review video Tom and I had recorded. Laughter rippled through the room at that one. Then came the violation notice, the harassment calls, and finally the video of Karen's failed fence project. Each piece stacked higher, building a tower she couldn't knock down. The room turned against her and waved. Whispers sharpened into outrage. A woman in the front row gasped, "She's been renting out his pool?" Another man muttered, "That's liability waiting to happen." Someone in the back yelled, "She fined him after she got caught?" Karen's veneer cracked. She tried interrupting, insisting it was all fabricated, but every denial sounded weaker than the last. Reynolds finally raised a hand. "Enough. The evidence speaks for itself." This board cannot ignore such blatant misconduct. The vote to remove her as HOA president wasn't unanimous. She still had a couple of loyalists, but it was decisive. The gavel came down with a satisfying smack. Karen was stripped of her title, her authority dissolved in a single stroke. She sat frozen, mouth open, eyes glassy. For once, she didn't have a retort. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, just another neighbor instead of the tyrant who had ruled the block. I thought removing Karen as HOA president would be the grand finale, the last act in her opera of entitlement. But if Chapter 4 was the climax, Chapter 5 was the encore nobody asked for. The kind where the villain, cornered and stripped of power, decides to torch the theater just so nobody else can take the stage. The morning after the board meeting, I found a notice taped to my front door in big red marker. * Enjoy your victory. This isn't over. * No letterhead, no signature, but who else would bother? It was almost cinematic in its pettiness, like she wanted me to know she still had teeth even after the HOA defanged her. I shrugged it off, but by afternoon, the retaliation escalated. First came the pizza deliveries. 5 of them in an hour, none ordered by me. Then an Amazon package arrived addressed to Mr. Flamingo Pool Resort, containing a dozen inflatable flamingos. Cute but transparent. Later, my phone buzzed with spam calls, 50 of them in one evening. All obvious harassment campaigns, and all screamed, Karen. But behind the juvenile antics was something sharper. I spotted her lurking by the community mailbox, whispering to anyone who'd listen. She was spinning her narrative, painting me as the neighborhood troublemaker who had weaponized the HOA against her. She framed herself as the martyr, the misunderstood leader who had been toppled by a vengeful neighbor. And the frightening part? A few people bought it. I realized then that evidence wasn't enough. People didn't just need to know what she had done, they needed to feel it. The Airbnb scheme, the fake fines, the attempted land grab, those were fact. But the deeper truth was that Karen thrived on control, and she'd keep clawing back unless I turned her own tactics against her. So I set a trap. Saturday morning, I quietly relist the Airbnb, not as her, but as me. The property description was tongue-in-cheek. The real luxury pool retreat, hosted by the actual owner. Photos showed me grinning by the grill, holding the laminated rule sheet like a trophy. The price? $1 a night. Non-refundable. And in bold at the bottom, * this listing exists to expose a scam run by a fraudulent host. Full story provided upon booking, *. Within hours, the neighborhood group chat lit up. Screenshots of my satire listing spread like wildfire. Neighbors laughed, joked about booking a night, and shared the story with friends outside the block. By evening, it had gone semi-viral on local Facebook group. Suddenly, the neighborhood wasn't just talking about Karen. They were laughing at her. That was the one thing she couldn't survive. Power can withstand scrutiny, but it crumbles under ridicule. Predictably, she stormed over that night, pounding on my door like a debt collector. When I opened it, she was shaking with rage, visor back on like armor. "You take that down right now," she hissed. I leaned on the doorframe, calm as ever. "Take what down? My listing?" Funny, I thought the HOA had no jurisdiction over Airbnb properties. Her face turned crimson. "You're mocking me. You're humiliating me." "Yes," I said evenly. "Exactly." For a second, I thought she might lunge at me, but then something flickered in her eyes. Not rage, fear. Because behind me, in the living room, Tom was filming. And she knew it. Every word, every threat, every ounce of her unraveling was being captured. She retreated with a hiss, muttering about lawyers, but the damage was already sealed. The next day, my parody listing was the punchline of a meme circulating in the neighborhood. Someone had photoshopped Karen's face onto the flamingo float, under the caption, 5-star host, 0-star neighbor. But the final nail in her coffin came not from me, not from the neighbors, but from the outside world. On Monday, an official-looking envelope arrived from Airbnb's legal department. Apparently, my parody listing had flagged their radar, and with it, their investigation into the original scam. They confirmed in writing what we already knew. Karen had violated multiple terms, impersonated an owner, and committed fraud. She was permanently banned from the platform. I made sure copies of that letter landed in every neighbor's mailbox. By Tuesday, the whispers stopped. Even her last 2 loyalists avoided eye contact when she marched down the street. The golden retriever that once wagged at her barked instead. She wasn't feared anymore. She wasn't respected. She was a punchline with a paper trail. Still, I wasn't satisfied with just her humiliation. I wanted closure. Real closure. So I called for one last gathering, an informal barbecue at my place, open invitation to every neighbor except her. The turnout was huge. Families brought side dishes, kids splashed in the pool, and the air buzzed with something I hadn't felt in years: community. Without Karen's shadow looming, people laughed easier, lingered longer, connected more. At one point, Mr. Reynolds raised a toast. "To the neighborhood," he said. "And to the man who reminded us this is our community, not hers." As glasses clinked and laughter swelled, I caught sight of her. Standing at the edge of her yard, visor low, arms folded. Watching. Seething. Isolated. I raised my glass in her direction, not mockingly but with finality. She had lost. Not just the presidency, not just her scam, but the illusion of control she'd built her life around. And me? I had my pool back. My backyard. My peace. That night, as the last guests left and the pool lights shimmered, I stretched out on the lounge chair and let the quiet sink in. The war was over. Karen might still mutter, still lurk, still stew in her bitterness, but she would never command the neighborhood again. The long game had paid off, and as I drifted off, one thought made me smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just reclaiming what's yours. It's making sure the tyrant who tried to take it is remembered forever, not as a ruler but as a cautionary tale.